Good evening. My name is John H. and I am an alcoholic. Welcome to the Code Blue Big Book Action Seminar. What we're going to do in this seminar, guys, is we're going to go through the first 164 pages of our big book, our Guide to Freedom, and we're going to do exactly what it says. I myself am no big book guru. I am no spiritual wonder man. I'm just a simple drunk who was almost dead from the disease when a couple recovered alcoholics took me through the book. I did the work, and it saved my life. Now, as a result of that, I try to pass on what has been so freely given to me. Now, I borrow heavily from the Joe and Charlie Big Book Weekend tapes. I borrow heavily from that smartass Clancy. I borrow from Chuck C. I borrow from all of the giants who have gone before me. So please, get yourself a big book, large print I prefer, a highlighter and a pen, and bring your willingness. Get ready to change your life. Thanks for listening. Good evening, everybody. I'm John. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, John. John.
During the 1950s, a man by the name of Max C., now dead, started a group in Winnipeg, Manitoba called the Golden Slippers. The group was a back to the basics of the big book kind of group, especially for those people who could not stay sober for any length of time. The group took a bunch of chronic slippers and walked them through the steps, taking the action exactly as laid out by the first 100 men and women who wrote the basic textbook Alcoholics Anonymous. This is not your typical thanks for sharing kind of AA meeting, nor is it like any seminar. Participants are asked to do all 12 steps as laid out in our basic textbook. One or more of the people who have done this work before will be guides to lead you through the instructions in our basic textbook using a dictionary published at about the same time as the book Alcoholics Anonymous to help us better understand the directions as they were written by the first 100 men and women. We ask every participant to commit to the entire process. Though we read and study the AA Big Book, this group is not limited to members of AA. We who have participated in these groups before have come to understand that these sessions make us much better sponsors. We can now lead people through the steps exactly as given to us by those who have gone before, unfettered and unchanged. In addition to being a boot camp for sponsors, we also feel this is especially valuable to those who have been through some sort of treatment or rehab and have been, in effect, left off at step 3 or 5. Recovery requires that we do all 12 steps. We recover in AA by taking the steps, and if we don't take the action as described in our basic textbook, we may not recover. These study and action sessions will guide you through the steps precisely as the first 100 men and women laid them down. These are back to the basic sessions, accepting the simple kit of spiritual tools that's been laid at our feet. Let's open with a set-aside prayer. God, please let me set aside everything I think I know about sobriety, life, and you, so that I may be open to a new experience. Peace. All right, guys. Introductions as we do the seventh tradition. I'm John Alcoholic.
Hey, John.
All right, welcome everybody. I think if anybody did miss last week, I have this sheet of paper here, which this again is not AA related. It's not AA material, but if you get online and you listen to get caught up, you go to Code Blue Big Book, look for the 2 books, get on there and type on full section 2, and last week was the doctor's opinion. Critical information to find out what's wrong with us. So, I always, whenever I hear something that I like, and this isn't even AA related, but whenever I hear something I like, I write it down. And the other day, I saw somebody who gave a definition of enabling. Because many people enable us, but we also enable other people. So the definition of enabling is to make something possible, practical, or easy for someone to do or to be that often perpetuates a problem rather than solves it. And when I heard this, I thought about my dear parents, and I thought about how my whole life, how they always bailed me out. They bailed me out of jail. They bailed me out of with the IRS. They were always there. And, God bless them. I find out, I didn't get sober till they were both dead. I was kind of a man-child, depending on them. I sobered up at age 48. But I just thought about them when I read this, and it's just one of those things. So, my first sponsor, he was a big advocate that if we're sponsoring somebody, and they're not willing to do, the work, we let them hit bottom. We let them hit bottom hard. We don't enable them, because if we enable them, we're just going to be adding to their problems. So I just thought that was a pretty cool definition. Last week, we looked at the doctor's opinion. And I don't know why, but the doctor's opinion, I don't know where my original book is, used to be on page 1, and they moved it into the Roman numerals. And I think I mentioned this, but I actually had a guy who was sober, 35 years, and he said, God, I saw this really cool thing. It's called the doctor's opinion. And it's like, he's been sober 35 years. He didn't know it was in our book. But it's critical information for us to understand what the problem is and why we have, how bad this problem is. So last week, we discovered that we have a physical allergy, right, that ensures that we cannot drink. And we have an obsession of the mind that ensures we can't stop drinking. So the ultimate conclusion when you read the doctor's opinion is that if you can't drink without getting drunk, and you can't keep from drinking, you are absolutely powerless over alcohol, and our lives are unmanageable. And I got to tell you, if your life isn't unmanageable yet, it certainly is going to be. Another way to put it, we have a body that can't take alcohol and a mind that can't leave it alone. Or the easiest definition is can't use, can't stop. We can't use and we can't stop. We're in some deep trouble. So we looked at the problem, and again, all through the big book, the way Bill writes is he's going to give us over and over and over, he's going to give us the problem, he's going to give us the solution, and he's going to give us the practical program of action to implement that solution. So problem, solution, simple plan of action to implement that solution over and over again. Now, back in the day, when it was just Bill and then Dr. Bob and then Bill Dotson, the first three, they would go out and they would make 12-step calls on people. So, they would go to the hospitals or maybe somebody they knew, they would go over. And what they would do is they would go over and they would share their stories. Essentially, they would tell them, what it was like, what happened, and what they're like now. And that's and we still do that today. That's called a 12-step call. When they decided to write the book, they wanted to follow up the doctor's opinion with a classic example of somebody who has the problem, right? And that's Bill W., one of our founders. And again, they learned early on the importance of sharing our stories with another alcoholic so that we can identify. Dr. Bob, Bill Dotson, the first two guys after Bill could see their problem through Bill's story. Another alcoholic will identify, we're hoping, with Bill's story, with Bill's drinking, and then ultimately with Bill's recovery. So they wanted to have the entire program of Alcoholics Anonymous, so somebody who got this book with no other members to help them, like it was in the early days, they could read it, and they could identify, they could see the solution, and then they could see the practical program of action. So we've got all of AA in Bill's story. Now, I remember when I first read Bill's story, it was in the mid-90s. I was going to Cocaine Anonymous. I was a blackout drinker, but I went to Cocaine Anonymous because, they had prettier girls, or so I thought, right? That's why I went there. I read Bill's story, and I saw nothing. I didn't see anything that reminded me of me, right? I had such a closed mind. Some people are going to say we can't identify with Bill because, maybe he's a man, maybe you're a woman. He's a stock speculator. He looks like an older guy, right? He lived a long time ago. So we're always looking for the differences, right? Because if we find enough differences between us and the people in AA, that gives us permission to go out and have another drink. So what we want to do today is we want to try to look for the similarities when we read Bill's stories, right? We want to look at the way Bill thinks, the way Bill acts, and the way Bill drinks. right? If we can identify with why he drank, what it did to him, he started out for courage, for loneliness, to fit in, and we're going to look for the progression of his disease, and then ultimately we're going to look and see how Bill recovered. And the whole idea of this is to let people see that if Bill, a hopeless alcoholic beyond human aid, if he could recover, perhaps we also can recover. So let's go, let's see here. One other thing, I wanted to read this too. I should have read it last week, but this is a pamphlet. It's called A Member's Eye View of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm not even sure who wrote it. I think it was written about 29 years after Bill Wilson met Bob in Akron. And this is when meetings started there started to become a lot of meetings everywhere. And people started using the power of the fellowship to stay sober, and they started easing up on the program. And one of the things this guy wanted to address that, even I think, gosh, what would that be, back in the 70s maybe, or even before. There is a widely held belief in AA that if a newcomer will simply continue to attend meetings, something will finally rub off on you. And the implication, of course, is that the something which rubs off will be this so-called miracle of AA. Now, there is no doubt in my mind that many people in AA accept this statement quite literally. I have observed them over the years. They faithfully attend meetings, faithfully waiting for something to rub off. The funny part about it is that something is rubbing off on them is death. It's death. They sit there week after month after year while mental, spiritual, and physical rigor mortis slowly set in. Right? So he goes on to say that he thinks the real miracle of AA is that the alcoholic will finally become willing to do the actions. Right? And I firmly believe, and that was me, man. I did that for 20 years. I was hoping against hope that I would get something by osmosis, and I never did the work. I find out later that we do need the power of the fellowship. We need the power of the meetings and the fellowship to support us, right? While we have the vital spiritual experience. The vital spiritual experience is a life-changing thing that happens to us when we go through the steps. And if we can combine both the power of the fellowship and the power of the vital spiritual experience, I don't care how hopeless you are, man. I can't tell you how hopeless I was. We're going to see how hopeless Bill was. If we can combine both of them, we're going to be able to recover from this disease. So what I got when I went to meetings, I got what they called medicine cabinet recovery, right? And what that did is it treated my symptoms, but it would only last for 1 month, maybe 2 months, maybe 3 months, and then I couldn't take it anymore, and I had to drink, right? But when I finally did the work, that obsession to drink was lifted out of me, by my higher power. It's nothing I did. I did the work, right? And my higher power took that obsession away. So I just thought that was pretty cool. So let's go to Bill's story, page 1. Okay, chapter 1, Bill's story. War fever ran high in the New England town to which we new young officers from Plattsburgh were assigned, and we were flattered when the first citizens took us to their homes, making us feel heroic. Here was love, applause, war, moments sublime with intervals hilarious. I was part of life at last. Let's highlight the next 4 lines. And in the midst of the excitement, I discovered liquor. I forgot the strong warnings and the prejudices of my people concerning drink. So there's a story about Bill in one of the books that I read, and he was at this party, before he was going to go overseas, and he was in a room full of people, and he was standing in the corner, and he felt totally alone in a room full of people, right? All of a sudden, Bill had a couple of drinks, and then he's no longer in the corner. He's out there mingling, talking, and having a great time. So Bill he used liquor right off the bat, so he could be more sociable. In time, we sailed for over there. Okay, and highlight this sentence as well. I was very lonely and again turned to alcohol. So next to that, we're going to write early 20s, and we're going to write Bill's solution is alcohol. So he's using alcohol for his loneliness. He's using it to get over his shyness. We landed in England. I visited Winchester Cathedral. Much moved, I wandered outside. So remember that line. I visited Winchester Cathedral, much moved, I wandered outside. We're going to look at that statement at the end of the story. My attention was caught by a doggerel on an old tombstone. Doggerel is a verse. It's a verse. Here lies a Hampshire grenadier. A grenadier is an elite soldier, much like a SEAL today, who caught his death drinking cold small beer. A good soldier is ne'er forgot, whether he dieth by musket or by pot. And pot was simply a way that they drank the beer. They had a big clay pot that they would fill up with the beer, and that's how they would drink it. This guy, it won't keep you sober, but his name was Thomas Thetcher. And 1764, and you're going to see that on his tombstone. You can look up the picture online. It's kind of cool. So what we're going to do for the next, till the middle of the next, actually to the end of this page and then the end of the next page, we're going to circle all of the I's, right? Because Bill was a very self-centered, selfish person. So we're just going to, every time you see the pronoun I want you to circle it. Ominous warning, which I failed to heed. 22 and a veteran of foreign wars, I went home at last. I fancied myself a leader, for had not the men of my battery given me a special token of appreciation? My talent for leadership, I imagined, would place me at the head of vast enterprises, which I would manage with utmost assurance. One of the symptoms, by the way, of alcoholism is self-centeredness. That's one of the main symptoms. I took a night law course and obtained employment as an investigator for a surety company. The drive for success was on. I'd proved to the world I was important. My work took me about Wall Street, and little by little I became interested in the market. Many people lost money, but some became very rich. Why not I? I studied economics and business as well as law. Potential alcoholic that I was, I nearly failed my law course. At one of the finals, I was too drunk to think or write. Highlight to the end of the paragraph. Though my drinking was not yet continuous, it disturbed my wife. We had long talks when I would still her forebodings by telling her that men of genius conceive their best projects when drunk, that the most majestic constructions of philosophic thought were so derived. So next to that, my sponsor had me write BS. And I remember, when I'm up all night drinking Windsor and doing Coke, and I'm writing out these things that are just the best ever, and you read them the next morning and it's not so much. By the time I had completed the course, I knew the law was not for me. The inviting maelstrom of Wall Street had me in its grip. Okay, maelstrom is like a whirlpool that sucks you in. So Bill is getting sucked into Wall Street. He's got Wall Street capitalized. Business and financial leaders were my heroes. Out of this alloy of drink and speculation, I commenced to forge the weapon that one day would turn in its flight like a boomerang and all but cut me to ribbons. Living modestly, my wife and I saved $1,000. Okay, so $1,000 back then, I looked it up on my phone, is right around $15,000 today, $15,000 today. It went into certain securities, then cheap and rather unpopular. I rightly imagined that they would someday have a great rise. I failed to persuade my broker friends to send me out looking over factories and managements, but my wife and I decided to go anyway. I had developed a theory that most people lost money in stocks through ignorance of markets. I discovered many more reasons later on. Okay, we're going to stop with the I. So what happened is, this is in the 1920s, and the stock market is on a roll, right? People are buying stocks on a 10% margin. They're going up in value. They're selling the stocks, then they're buying more, and it's just going up and up and up. And Bill said, he was really one of the first investment counselors, and he said, you know what, man? Sooner or later, this bubble's going to burst. And here's what I propose. If you stake me, I'll go up and down the eastern seaboard and I'll check out the top 100 companies and I'll get a look at their books. I'll talk to the employees and I'll write up some information so that we can make our decisions based upon real information rather than just sheer speculation, right? I mean, that's a pretty good idea. The money men on Wall Street said, yeah, Bill, thanks, but no thanks. We're making so much money right now, we really don't need you to do that. Bill got all pissed off. You know how we alcoholics are. He said, the hell with you, I'm going to go do this anyway. So he went on his own. We gave up our positions and off we roared on a motorcycle. The sidecar stuffed with tent, blankets, a change of clothes, and 3 huge volumes of a financial reference service. And you can look that picture up online too. You just type in Bill Lois motorcycle and it'll pop up. Our friends thought a lunacy commission should be appointed. Perhaps they were right. I had had some success at speculation, so we had a little money. But once we worked on a farm for a month to avoid drawing on our small capital. Won't keep you sober, but that farm was on Syracuse, New York. That was the last honest manual labor on my part for many a day. We covered the whole eastern United States in a year. At the end of it, my reports to Wall Street, again, underline Wall Street, and next to it we're going to write deity to Bill. Every time there's a deity or Bill uses a word as a deity, he capitalizes it. So right now, money is Bill's higher power, and he thinks if he gets a lot of money that he is a complete human being, right? My reports to Wall Street procured me a position there and the use of a large expense account. The exercise of an option brought in more money, leaving us with a profit of several $1,000s for that year. So he got back, right, and he had written up all these reports, and he went to the money men on Wall Street, and he said, hey man, look at this stuff I got. They looked at it and they said, my God, Bill, you were right, this is fantastic stuff. And they gave him that job with the office, and again, the exercise of an option brought in more money with several $1,000s profit, which was one heck of a lot of money back then. For the next few years, fortune threw money and applause my way. I had arrived. Underline those 3 words. I had arrived, right? My judgment and ideas were followed by many to the tune of paper millions. So what Bill is doing here is he is using what's called, you can write external reference. Okay, external reference. And what that is, and I tried to do that for years, that's looking outside of ourself to get, to find value as a human being. Right? And I thought if I just had, if Bill's got enough money, if Bill's got a position with prestige, if Bill's got a huge apartment, Bill is he's a total success as a human being. So it's solely based on external things, right? And when we tend to do that solely on the external, we don't have much inside us. And I remember one time for me, man, I had this great sales job, and when I lost that job, I had nothing left. There was nothing. I was nobody. Without that job, I was the big zero. So external reference, we've got to be careful about that. The great boom of the late 20s was seething and swelling. Underline the next sentence. Drink was taking an important and exhilarating part in my life. Okay, so drinking is not yet a problem for Bill, right? And he's still successful. Successful externally. There was loud talk in the jazz places uptown. Everyone spent in thousands and chattered in millions. Scoffers could scoff and be damned. Underline, I made a host of fair weather friends. Okay, when I quit drinking and using drugs and sobered up, none of my friends I didn't have any friends anymore, right? They were all gone. Fair weather friends. My drinking assumed more serious proportions, continuing all day and almost every night. The remonstrances of my friends, so you can underline remonstrances, and that means list of complaints. It's kind of the definition here, list of complaints. The remonstrances of my friends terminated in a row, and I became a lone wolf. Underline lone wolf. So, they said, Bill, you're drinking too much. Bill, you're doing this to Lois. Bill, this is happening. And Bill, you got to stop drinking. He said, the hell with you, right? The hell with you guys. There were many unhappy scenes in our sumptuous apartment. There had been no real infidelity. Underline the next two lines. For loyalty to my wife, helped at times by extreme drunkenness, kept me out of those scrapes. Now, I believe just about everything Bill Wilson has written, except for this one line right here, because we all know Bill's got a book called As Bill Sees It, but Lois has one called As Lois Remembers. And they don't, in this case here, they don't necessarily match up. In 1929, I contracted Gulf fever. We went at once to the country, my wife to applaud while I started out to overtake Walter Hagen. So Walter Hagen was the golf champ. You can write at the bottom, 14-29 golf champ. So this guy, I guess you could relate him to Tiger Woods, but he was much greater than in his prestige than Woods was in his heyday. 14-29, the golf champ. Liquor caught up with me much faster than I came up behind Walter. I began to be jittery in the morning. Golf permitted drinking every day and every night. It was fun to caroom around the exclusive course which had inspired such awe in me as a lad. Underline the next sentence. I acquired the impeccable coat of tan one sees upon the well-to-do. So next, off to the left, let's write, looking good on outside, feeling bad on inside. Looking good on outside, feeling bad on inside. At the height of my drinking, I looked so horrible I had to go to the tanning booth. The local banker watched me whirl fat checks in and out of his till with amused skepticism. Abruptly in October 1929, hell broke loose on the New York Stock Exchange. Next to that you can write crash, Black Tuesday. That's the crash. It's called Black Tuesday. And that's that bubble, that Bill foresaw. After one of those days of inferno, I wobbled from a hotel bar to a brokerage office. It was 8 o'clock, 5 hours after the market closed. The ticker still clattered. I was staring at an inch of tape which bore the inscription XYZ-32. It had been 52 that morning, right? So off to the left you can write drop 20 points. That's almost a 50% drop in value. If you can imagine what would happen today if that happened. There goes everybody's 401ks. I was finished, and so were many friends. And remember, everybody was buying on 10% margin, so there was no way when it dropped that anybody could pay. The papers reported men jumping to death from the towers of high finance. Circle high finance, and again, let's write money was higher power. He's got that capitalized. So money really is Bill's higher power. If he's got enough money, he's okay no matter how much he's drinking or what's going on. That disgusted me. I would not jump. I went back to the bar. My friends had dropped several million since 10 o'clock. So what? Tomorrow was another day. As I drank, the old fierce determination to win came back. Next to that sentence, let's write liquid courage. Liquid courage. You get out of jail and you're feeling pretty low. You go by the bar and you start drinking, and damn it, I'll show them. Liquid courage. Next morning, I telephoned a friend. The friend was Dick Johnson, and he was not an alcoholic. Dick Johnson, not an alcoholic. Next morning, I telephoned a friend in Montreal. He had plenty of money left, and I thought he had better go to Canada. Bill's not stupid. He's going to go where the money is. By the following spring, we were living in our accustomed style. I felt like Napoleon returning from Elba. No St. Helena for me. Underlined at the end of the paragraph. But drinking caught up with me again, and my generous friend had to let me go. This time we stayed broke. Okay, so we're going to write consequence next to that. So we can see how Bill's drinking is progressing. So we're going to write consequence next to that one. And then let's highlight the next two sentences in the next paragraph. We went to live with my wife's parents. I found a job, then lost it as a result of a brawl with a taxi driver. So living with his wife's parents, how awful is that for a guy who's got the pride of Bill, right? The guy that says, I'll show them, I'll make the money, right? That must have been very, very hard on his pride. Another consequence, you can write consequence again. He lost another job. Mercifully, no one could guess that I was to have no real employment for 5 years or hardly draw a sober breath. My wife began to work in a department store. That was Macy's, coming home exhausted to find me drunk. So now Bill's mooching off Lois, his wife, right? She's got a job, a low-paid hourly job at Macy's. I became an unwelcome hanger-on at brokerage places. So, the brokerage places were the place where Bill had that big corner office and he was doing quite well. Now Bill shows up, he's unkempt, he's unshaven, he smells like booze, and he's scaring away the clients, and they're saying, Bill, get out of here, you're scaring everybody. Bill, leave, get out of here. And these were the people that he had made a lot of money for not too long ago. Let's highlight the next two sentences. Liquor ceased to be a luxury, it became a necessity. Bathtub gin, 2 bottles a day, and often 3 got to be a routine. So next to that, let's write crossing invisible line. Crossing invisible line. Now, you don't need to drink like Bill drinks to cross that invisible line, right? You don't need to drink like that. But it gets into our heads, and then when we drink, we go overboard and we get some pretty serious consequences. So I think all of us at some point or another cross that invisible line, and we do not have to be drinking 2 bottles a day to get there. Sometimes a small deal would net a few $100s. I would pay my bills at the bars and delicatessens. Okay, next to bills at the bars there, if you were a drug addict, in addition to an alcoholic, you can write pay dope man first, right? I mean, I was a blackout drinker, but I was also, I paid my crack dealer, right, when I got money. If you're just a regular alcoholic, write protect supply, right? He's protecting his supply. He wants to be able to go in there and get more. We're going to highlight to the end of the paragraph. This went on endlessly, and I began to waken very early in the morning, shaking violently. A tumbler full of gin, followed by half a dozen bottles of beer, would be required if I were to eat any breakfast. Nevertheless, I still thought I could control the situation, and there were periods of sobriety which renewed my wife's hopes. So, in the middle of that paragraph, right, followed by half dozen bottles, let's write insanity, powerlessness. Insanity, powerlessness. And then the last sentence of that paragraph, I still thought I could control the situation. Let's write self-will won't keep us sober. Self-will won't keep us sober. We saw that in the doctor's opinion last week. If there's ever a fight between our willpower and the obsession to drink, from time to time, the obsession is going to overcome all ideas to the contrary, and we're going to pick up that damn drink. So our self-will won't keep us sober. Gradually, things got worse. Underline, the house was taken over by the mortgage holder, just that line, and let's write consequence again. The consequences are starting to pile up here. My mother-in-law died. My wife and father-in-law became ill. Then I got a promising business opportunity. Stocks were at the low point of 1932, and I had somehow formed a group to buy. I was to share generously in the profits. Underline that last sentence. Then I went on a prodigious bender, and that chance vanished. So we're going to write drinking away opportunities. I mean, I think everybody in this room has drank away some opportunities now and again. I mean, I know I drank away a lot of them. So this is a story in and of itself. What happened here is the money men on Wall Street, they knew that Bill was really good at putting these deals together, and they had a deal, and they said, look, Bill, we want you to handle this deal. If you handle this deal and you bring it to its successful completion, we're going to make money, they're going to make money, and you're going to share in the profits. But Bill, if you drink, right? If you drink, we're going to kick you out of this deal, and everything is gone. And Bill said, don't you worry about that drinking, man. I'm done with that drinking. So Bill worked on this deal for 2.5 months, nonstop, right? And just a couple days before it was to reach a successful completion, they're all sitting around in a hotel room in New Jersey, and they're passing around a bottle of moonshine, a bottle of Applejack, right? And it got to Bill, and he said, oh no, I'm not drinking. And he passed the bottle. It went around the room again, and the guy next to Bill said, Bill, you don't understand. This is Jersey Lightning. This is the best stuff I've ever tried. And without another thought, Bill said, Jersey Lightning. He took a swig, triggered the allergy, couldn't get sober, and he blew the whole deal. Got nothing. So let's see, the importance of this is what happened next. And we're going to highlight the whole next paragraph. I woke up. This had to be stopped. I saw I could not take so much as one drink, and circle that one. So Bill gets it. He can't even have one drink because that swig pushed him over the edge. I was through forever. Before then, I had written lots of sweet promises, but my wife happily observed that this time I meant business, and so I did. So next to that paragraph, we're going to write moment of clarity. Bill had his moment of clarity. He said, I get it now. I cannot even have one drink. And so I did. Let's write written in front of the Bible. So Bill made a big production. Let's get out the family Bible. I'm going to write it right in the front that I'm through drinking forever, and I'm going to sign it, right? Moment of clarity. Highlight the next 6 words. Shortly afterward, I came home drunk. There it is. There had been no fight. Where had been my high resolve? I simply didn't know. It hadn't even come to mind. Someone had pushed a drink my way and I had taken it. Was I crazy? I began to wonder, for such an appalling lack of perspective seemed near being just that. Next to that paragraph, write powerless. Powerlessness, maybe. Powerlessness. He couldn't stop. Renewing my resolve, I tried again. Some time passed. Okay, so just on this top paragraph, let's circle the I's again. Some time passed and confidence began to be replaced by cocksuredness. I could laugh at the gin mills. Now I had what it takes. One day I walked into a cafe to telephone. In no time, I was beating on the bar, asking myself how it happened. As the whiskey rose to my head, I told myself I would manage better next time, but I might as well get good and drunk then, and I did. So again, next to that one, at the top of the page, let's write self-knowledge, right? Because Bill had that self-knowledge again, that if he just doesn't drink, he's okay. And next to that paragraph, let's write powerlessness again. So Bill's really getting hammered over and over with his powerlessness over alcohol and the unmanageability of his life. Underline this next sentence. The remorse, horror, and hopelessness of the next morning are unforgettable. Underline that one, and we're going to put another ask sponsee next to that. So let's write, and I want you guys to think about this too. Ask sponsee, can you relate to that? Right? Can you relate to that? Ask sponsee, can you relate to that? So we've given up booze for good. We know that we just can't drink anymore. And then we go ahead and we do it anyway. And we wake up the next day and we say, oh my God, I did it again. I did, oh my God, is that my car out there? Oh my God, what did I do? Oh my God, right? The remorse, horror, and hopelessness of the next morning are unforgettable. The courage to do battle was not there. Underline the next 4 lines. My brain raced uncontrollably, and there was a terrible sense of impending calamity. I mean, I can't tell you guys the way oh, God, this is going to happen, that's going to happen, oh my God, this is going to happen, oh, it's going to be the end of the world, right? I hardly dared cross the street lest I collapse and be run down by an early morning truck, for it was scarcely daylight. An all-night place supplied me with a half-dozen glasses of ale. My writhing nerves were stilled at last. A morning paper told me the market had gone to hell again. Well, so would I. The market would recover, but I wouldn't. That was a hard thought. Highlight to the end of the paragraph, the 3 lines. Should I kill myself? No, not now. Then a mental fog settled down. Gin would fix that, so 2 bottles in oblivion. So next to that, we're going to write suicidal. All of a sudden, Bill is thinking, hey, there's something deadly, there's something wrong with me, and I don't know what it is. Should I kill myself? So write suicidal and powerlessness again. The mind and body are marvelous mechanisms, for mine endured this agony 2 more years. Sometimes I stole from my wife's slender purse when the morning terror and madness were on me. Underline the next 2 lines. Again, I swayed dizzily before an open window or the medicine cabinet where there was poison, cursing myself for a weakling. Next to that, we're going to write suicidal again. Big old, Bill, the big man, he's thinking about taking his life. There were flights from city to country and back as my wife and I sought escape. Next to that, write geographical cure. So Bill's whipping all over the place, and he's taking poor Lois with him. That's what we do to the people in our lives, right? That's why, when an alcoholic starts to get sober, the rest of the family is very sick as well, and I hope to goodness that we can get the rest of the family to Al-Anon. Children and wives, ex-wives, everybody. There were flights from city to country and back as my wife and I sought escape. Then came the night when the physical and mental torture were so hellish, I feared I would burst through my window sash and all. Again, thinking suicide again. Somehow I managed to drag my mattress to a lower floor lest I suddenly leap. A doctor came with a heavy sedative. Underline the next 2 lines. Next day found me drinking both gin and sedative. Doing them both. This combination soon landed me on the rocks. So, people, on the top of the page, let's write drinking for oblivion. So Bill is now drinking for oblivion. And when you get to that point, that's pretty tough. The one problem about drinking for oblivion is we wake up, right? And then we got to do it again. People feared for my sanity, so did I. I could eat little or nothing when drinking, and I was 40 pounds underweight. Right, so he's slowly dying. My brother-in-law is a physician. So next to that, we're going to write summer of 33, and we're going to write Dr. Leonard Strong. Dr. Leonard Strong. And you can look him up. You don't need to write it, but he was on the board of directors, I believe, of the town's hospital, and he was also one of the first non-alcoholic trustees of Alcoholics Anonymous. Back when they put all this thing together, they had to have a whole bunch of non-alcoholics in these positions because we're known to go off the rails. So they wanted to make sure there'd be some continuity, right? And through his kindness and that of my mother, I was placed in a nationally known hospital for the mental and physical rehabilitation of alcoholics. Again, Bill's first treatment, summer of 1933, and that's the town's hospital. Under the so-called belladonna treatment, underline belladonna, and you can write water and mushrooms. Water and mushrooms. Well, the belladonna, that was used to fool the body into thinking it had alcohol in it, and it helped with withdrawal symptoms. And today, of course, they use Valium, and maybe there's even some new stuff that I'm not aware of. It's been 6 years since I've been through detox. Under the so-called belladonna treatment, my brain cleared. Hydrotherapy, underline hydrotherapy, and mild exercise helped much. That's what I meant when I said water. The hydrotherapy, what they did is they would take a drunk, they would strap him down onto a gurney, and they would wheel him into an oval shower room that had a bunch of shower heads that were alternating hot and cold water. And they would take the drunk and they'd push him in that room up and down, and they called it hydrotherapy. It doesn't cure alcoholism, but you do get a clean drunk out of it. They used to try all kinds of things because they just didn't know, man. All kinds of crazy stuff. Hydrotherapy and mild exercise helped much. Best of all, I met a kind doctor who explained that though certainly selfish and foolish, underline, I had been seriously ill bodily and mentally.